Hello, can you hear me?
Hey, Clossius. Hey, Clossius.
How are you?
Great, thanks. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you? Oh wait, I
Real
wrote
good.
it's a conversation. Sorry, auto response. All right. So let's see. PMC. So let me pull up your account. What was your account again? PMC.
P McLeanstone?
Oh, with a space. That's why. That's why I couldn't do it. Spaces are important. All right. So how have your games been going?
Yeah, so is Case. Well, up and down, but I feel like I'm still making a lot of progress every couple of days.
That's good. Just slow and steady. We gotta win that turtle race. Yeah, it looks like you're doing about
Yeah.
50-50, so that's good. It means you're definitely playing at your level. But you were 20K last time and 21Q this time. But were you playing small boards? Oh,
No, no, all 19 by 19. It's just that, I lost more games just recently. I think I'm playing better than I was 2 weeks ago with the lesson. I've definitely improved since then.
awesome. Um, so let's see. The first thing you learn at this level is what is the goal. When you review, you ask, did this move do the goal? So I'm looking at our notes from last time. So just goals, and we're going to see if you were able to do that. I'm noticing you're playing new bot a lot. You're playing bots a lot.
Not so much just lately. I do play them when I can't get a game. If I'm waiting for 10 minutes for a game and no one's there, I'll play. But apart from that, I'm not playing.
Okay, that's fine. That's good. Yeah, always play humans if you can. Let's see. So your most recent
Uh,
one, oh,
I've got some.
yeah, you got your
I've got
games.
some suggestions.
Okay. So let's look
Um,
at the first one, I guess.
that'd be great. That's the latter one.
Okay, so this one you said, I read a ladder well in this game, but I didn't punish it very effectively. I'd like to know how, as I nearly lost the game even though the ladder was huge. Um, all right, well let's figure it out. But what is also more important is making sure that you're following the basics when you get to that ladder.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you're black, open corners, and then now open sides. Okay,
Yep.
open sides. Okay, do you know my talk about how you learn Josekis or what Josekis you should know?
I've started going through Giuseppes. I'm doing all 4-4 start point openings to start with, but I haven't experimented with the 3-4s yet, but I know I need to do that next.
Well, it's more about direction of play. So you know how we always say direction. You know how I say direction of play is important, like open sides, blah blah blah. In this case, the
Yep,
open
yep.
side is the left side, not the top side, correct?
Um, yes.
Yeah. So you would want to choose a Joseki that kind of goes along with that. So in this case, you want to choose a pincer. So whenever I say learn Josekis, I always say start out with four. There's two responses, one low, one high per direction of play. So, for example, A and B are the top side direction play, one low, one high. And the left side, C and D, are the left side direction play, but one low, one high. So I usually say start out with like those simple responses and those simple Josekis. That way you have a flexible Joseki for direction of play, and you'll be on the correct line depending on the situation. So you have four tools to utilize in different openings. Does that make sense?
Yep. All my focus for Giuseppes has been stuck right in the corner. I haven't really thought about the bits that go out beyond the corner.
Yeah, once a stone approaches the corner, you should consider the corner shared. So now your corner's not interesting. It's do you want to go that way or do you want to go that way? Once they approach the corner, a corner is shared, usually. So you just start thinking about direction of play. So in this case, this would actually look very nice. And then surround them in the corner. And this is a very simple Joseki. and also very common with the Sanren-sei formation, which is the 3-star formation. So this actually builds you a very nice influence. So it plays on the left side. It also works with the top side very well, surrounds your opponent, and you have a very large position. So that would be a nice Joseki to choose. But if you compare it to just the normal Joseki, so this is normal, so it's not bad for this level. Like, you're not going to die or anything. But if you compare the Josekis, which one looks better?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I hadn't thought about that. I'm thinking too local for each Joseki.
I mean, it's hard to think about this if someone doesn't tell you, honestly, until you get to like higher levels. So it's just kind of food for thought. It's more of like bonus information. It's not your highest priority, but when you're learning Josekis on the 19x19, you kind of want to think about this way: which direction to play, what are my responses? Do I go low? Do I go high? Do I need Sente? That's kind of what you're looking for in Josekis. So don't just play one Joseki and only that Joseki. You need multiple options. So this is why they say don't memorize Josekis, because you need to be flexible.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a big takeaway to start with. That's awesome. Thanks.
So this one is not good. Because when they touch, you either Nobi or you Hane. Okay? In this case, you can Hane because the cutting point is just the ladder. Okay? So the cutting point actually doesn't work. So when they touch like this, just block. And you're also blocking your base. But if you go to the second line, it's kind of strange because now he just gets in further and you don't have as much of a base. So he's making a base in your base. So you want to block that. And usually players will try to do this move because they see it, the AI Josekis, and they try to want to copy the AI and copy strong players. My response to this for double-digit Qs is simply fix your cutting points, they fix theirs, and then you make a base. Now in this case, you don't need a base because you already have K16, so you actually can just go play elsewhere. But if it was blank on a blank position, you would just make a base. So this is a very easy response for you when they try to do these high-level Josekis that are very complex. Just connect, make a base. Easy peasy. And if you already have a stone there, then just Tanuki. But just fix your cutting point and Tanuki. Let them make the mistakes. Let them go like here or here or whatever.
Just then, So just then you were putting a stone at C6 next. So why would you choose C6's approach down the bottom instead of, say, C9 or C10 to be able to make a base on the open side?
Because there's more than one option to play on an open side. So let's say the open side you have, let's say you have a stone leg on the right or whatever. You have an enclosure, you have an extension, and you have an approach. Those are your basic options for playing on an open side, right? So in this case, on the left side, because white is there, I don't really have an extension or an enclosure, so I have an approach. But like you said, there's also a wedge, which means I can play on the side, and I still have space to make a 2-space extension. Okay? So that means I can play this and be completely fine. That is absolutely true. It's just there's more than one option. So your wedge and my approach are both fine. The idea is I'm playing on the open side.
Right. I've been doing a lot of those wedges, and they're great because it doesn't matter what my opponent does. I can still make a base.
Yeah, wedges are very easy to use. But there is a small weakness. So wedges are completely fine for you. Just keep playing them. That's fine. But they're kind of like old-fashioned because when you play a wedge in modern play with the emphasis on the center, you can push it to get influence in the center. So while they survive, which it's very easy to survive, it's very easy to use, right? So black's completely fine, black's alive, but in modern play, with the emphasis on the center, it's very easy to bully it a little bit. Now, this is not going to be important at your level, but this is why you won't see it very much in higher level games, is because the wedge is a little bit old-fashioned, so it's not in the current meta, but it's still a fine move. Now, and there are exceptions to this, of course. There's always exceptions. But that's why I favored the approach over the wedge. Now, with that being said, the wedge approach, both are fine. The point is play on the open side. Or play on the big framework or whatever. Okay, so this one is completely fine. This is unnecessary cutting point fix. Because remember, at this level, you stress seeing cutting points. This is true. But you're supposed to learn what cutting points work and which ones don't on the small boards before you move to the big boards, because losing Sente or losing a free move is so big. And if they cut right here, you just push them to the edge. So this cut doesn't work. And it's a very bad habit to fix cuts blindly. Okay? Very bad habit to fix cuts.
Yeah, I went from never fixing my cuts to fixing them blindly. I've got to come back a bit, right?
No, that's actually the proper order to learn. Is like when you start on the 9x9, like when I teach beginners, I say start on the 9x9, learn to see cutting points, and learn how to block territory, right? So cutting points. So first you say I need to see cutting points, and I fix them blindly. That is how you start, and then you move up to the 13x13. And you say, okay, I need to push the borders and get third line, fourth line cutting points. And then once you understand cutting points on the small boards, then you start thinking, okay, now I need to move it to the next level, and now I can see the cutting points. Now I need to read the cutting points. Does it work or does it not work? And that's a huge step up, but also very important. And you need to have that for the 19x19, because losing a single move for unnecessary defense is basically passing. Passing on the 19x19 is very, very big, because then they get another big move and you fall behind very quickly if your opponents are playing big moves. So that is why if you are unsure about how to read cutting points, play on the small board and start reading the cutting points. And just try to say, can I ignore this cutting point? Of course, check. Of course, see the cutting point. But you can train your eyes on the small board for cutting points specifically. But on the big board, on the 19x19, you need to always check these, but you need to be able to read these before you just fix them. Fixing them blindly is a bad habit once you're past like 24, 23Q. Then you need to start reading them and say, does it work, does it not? Always check, though, but read them. Check them in your head. So yeah, here's another cutting point blind. Because if you see that your opponent pushes and you block and tries to cut, you're trapped against the edge. So this is another one. Make sense?
Yeah, it's 2 already. Wow. Yep.
All right. Yeah, so here you're playing again. So here you're playing a really local. Are you asking yourself the questions? Like every single turn?
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm trying to, but not very good, obviously, yet.
So here, do you have any groups with cutting points or that need a base?
Not right there.
Okay. So this is kind of a red flag for me. So it looks like, hey, I'm going to play this Hane. Now, what does a Hane do? When do we use a Hane? Hane is a shape, and it is one of our beginner shapes, but at what category do we use it? Defense, offense, or big move?
Attacking.
This says, if I looked at this situation, I'm like, okay, am I playing a big move? No, because a big move is open corners, open sides, largest framework. Okay? Am I playing defense? No, because a defense would be expand my eye space or run away. So in this case, a 1-point jump would be very nice defense. It makes a base. That's on the third line. Very solid, very safe. And 1-point jumps are very nice and easy to use. Okay? But you played a Hane. So that means it's not big move, it's not defense, you are surrounding something. Okay? So you're trying to attack the A stones. But the A stones are almost immediately connected to the B stones. And the B stones have eye space with almost a base. Because if you just draw the borders down, that's a bulky 5. And you know the bulky 5, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So bulky 5 is like 1 move from life, and you can expand, and you can run away. So it's very difficult to attack B. So B's practically settled. So when you're playing a Hane, this says I'm trying to attack a living group, or I'm threatening this cutting point. Okay? So are you threatening that cutting point, or are you just playing defense? Why play this Hane right now?
Well, I was actually playing it because I thought I'd attack a bit and get extra sort of security in that top right-hand open side area. Sorry, not right-hand side. Sorry, left middle.
The strategy that you just said is a single-digit Q strategy, but the application is incorrect. So what you said was, I want to lean on his weakness to gain strength. So I'm kind of using his weakness to gain strength in this area. Very cool tactic, very powerful, single-digit Q. But you're kind of skipping a lot of basics here, because the basics you're skipping is, one, B has a base. So it's not weakness. You're not leaning on weakness, you're leaning on strength, which is incorrect. And two, at this level, it's if you want to defend, just defend. You don't want to start using their weakness to defend until you learn how defense works in general. Because that's how you say, I'm going to cut him off so that way he's weaker, so I'm stronger, and blah, blah, blah. And that's how you end up messing up and making mistakes and getting cut. So saying
that explains a lot. Thanks.
Saying that I'm going to defend with the Hane, or I'm going to gain strength with the Hane, even though you are correct, you're leaning on liberty problems to gain strength. What is your response if I go here? Do you know how to deal with all of this? And probably this gets really complicated really quickly, because it's a cutting point, and now you have multiple weaknesses, and it's like, oh, I don't want to deal with all these problems. We just need to simplify the game for ourselves while we are learning these basic patterns, which means I should just be playing a 1-point jump or a 2-space jump on the third line and making my base. Why am I trying to play a Hane for defense? Right? Or, better yet, why am I trying to attack when my opponent has a base? So it's understanding the fundamentals of how attack and defense works, and you're kind of skipping over that understanding and just trying to apply single-digit Q tactics when you haven't really understood how it works yet. Does that kind of make sense?
Makes good sense.
So I do like your idea, but it's not correct here, because it's a little bit off the mark. It's not understanding what's actually happening. So even though it sounds good in your head, and you have to be very careful of this, because saying good strategies in your head, yeah, that's probably a cool strategy if it actually was the case. But you have to look at the board and actually say, what is actually happening? Is there a cutting point? Is there a base? That's the basics of attack and defense, is cutting points and bases. If you can't see those things, you can't say, I have strategy this or I have strategy that, because you aren't even seeing if something's weak or not weak. So learn these fundamentals first before you start applying single-digit Q level tactics. So in this case, you have to say, do I have a base? Yes or no. Okay? Then you move on. Does he have a base? Yes or no. Then you move on. Where's the big move? Okay? So you're kind of you're trying to do too much all at the same time. Just do one thing at a time. We don't need multi-purpose moves right now. We need to learn to just see the very, very basics, which is, does a cutting point work? Yes or no. Do I have a base? Yes or no. We just need to see that. That is it. Attack and defense at this level is simply that. Cutting points and bases. And then you add on surrounding at like 15Q. So here you're playing...
Sounds great.
Yeah, here you're playing an Atari. You're still trying to attack these stones. But you can see that White's completely alive. And all of White's responses are so easy because White's alive. So you're not getting any profit because you're attacking a living herb. So now you finally Tanuki. So this is good. You play on an open framework on the left. So that's fine. So he plays. You make your base. Perfect. So here's a little hint about the 2-space jump. It's very nice, but it's strong up until there's a stone on both sides. When there's a stone on both sides, then you need a follow-up. The follow-up is jump and jump. Now it's a lot stronger. So a two-space jump by itself is really strong and very easy to handle. But the reason it's easy to handle is because your opponent has to get on both sides of the two-space jump, and then after they do that, you just simply run away and make two one-space jumps, and you're strong again. So that's why it's so easy to handle. But it's very important that you remember, if there's a stone on both sides, you need these one-point jumps.
I didn't know that. That's so funny. That's why lessons are a good idea, right?
Yeah. But yeah, you first have to learn that two-space jumps are a thing, and then you learn the follow-ups after you play them. So you're learning in the correct order. So you invaded the bottom side, perfectly fine. Okay, so now you have a weak group, so expand your eye space. Very nice. Watch your cutting points. You're defending with a Hane again. Expand your eye space. And then you can play a Tiger's Mouth. Tiger's Mouth is very powerful. Tiger's Mouth gets out very quickly. There's no cutting point in a Tiger's Mouth. But you expand your eye space, and then you run away. Honestly, the first shape you can consider is this one-point jump right here. Because you want to run away with one-point jumps, because that's our beginner shapes. But in this case, you don't play a one-point jump when they take one of your liberties, because that leads to oopsies. Because you're an Atari and blah, blah, blah. So against, when they take a liberty, it's a Nobi, and then when they try to surround, then you one-point jump. So one-point jumps would be your first consideration. So the sequence that I would want to see it for this level is expand the eye space, Nobi up to run away without losing, because I have liberty problems, I'm going to Nobi instead of one-point jump. But I'm running away, and I'm running away. Okay? And then if you get surrounded, then you can expand your eye space on the second line, and then play a Vita point. Like that, like Tiger's Mouth or something. That's kind of the order of operations. But playing a Hane while we're defending is just asking to be cut. And now if you're like, oh, but I can just capture it, can you? Because when I turn right here, you have 2 liberties. And I have 3. See, this is, I'm not expecting you to read all this out, but you can see that sometimes bad shape will lead to bad results just by accident. Because it's hard for us to read at this level, or read the sequence at this level. So we play shapes that are easy to read, like this one. So now if he tries to cut, I Atari and connect, and we know second line cuts just push to the edge. That we know from 9x9. Second line cuts just push them to the edge. So this sequence is much easier to read than this one. And this is why we use beginner level shapes at this level, because we want easy follow-ups, easy sequences. But we're still accomplishing the goal of defense. So I don't like that we're playing Hanes for defense. It leads to very dangerous situations, and it's very easy for you to die doing that. All right, so you fix your cut.
So that probably explains my drop. I learned to use Hanes in a way to self-destruct my progress.
Yeah, Hanes are good for offense, but not for defense. So don't just learn the shape, learn which shapes are used in which category.
Awesome.
So like one-point jumps are really good for... actually, one-point jumps work in all 3 categories, honestly. But like diagonals, good for surrounding and good for defense, but not so much for developing. Shoulder hits, really good for offense and building, but not so good for defense. So yeah, you definitely got to work on cutting points. So
yeah, I made a big mistake there. I realized afterwards.
Maybe it would be good to do a refresher. Maybe like a 10 to 20 9x9, and then 10 to 20 13x13, because we can't mess up cutting points. So while you're learning this new stuff, we can't mess up our previous basics, which is cutting points. So the first note is my first advice is revisit the small boards to remaster cutting points. We'll just say simple cutting. Remaster simple cutting points. Because you're messing them up a little too much for the 19x19. So this is something that, like, when you learn a new thing, it's very easy to forget your previous knowledge. So make sure you're not messing up cutting points while you're learning how to defend and blah, blah, blah. So here, you're also trying to cut when you're supposed to be playing defense. So do you know that you're in defense right now, or you think you're in offense?
No, I know I'm in defense
So why are we cutting?
because for some reason, I just thought that P1 was already there, and I thought, oh, good, I've got an opening, but I just didn't read it properly. I just didn't look properly.
Yeah, so I think we do need to revisit the cutting points because we can't really play in touching fights without knowing cutting points. So we have to have that down, and then we can come back and then say, okay, now I need like my eye space. Excuse me, eye space, run away, blah blah blah.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Okay, not my favorite shape, but okay. You're defending and staying connected. Stay connected, nice. Just live your life. Done. If he wants to keep attacking you, just ignore. You're alive. You have 2 eyes. If he tries to take your eye, then yeah, block. But otherwise, yep, just big move. Big move. Big move. Big move. Once you're alive, just live and leave. Live and leave. When you're surrounded, just live and leave. Okay, good. Good. You're cutting again with defense. You cannot do this without very accurate reading. Because trying to do this, let's just look on the inside and ignore the outside. This move, you can't block because capture. So you have to fix this way. Oh, you don't have to.
Yeah.
Like if you try to Atari,
I missed
there's a
that
throw
fix
in.
altogether.
Yeah. So it's very easy to say, oh, he played 1, I'm going to defend. And then he starts playing here, and all of a sudden you have 3 liberties, and your own eye is killing you. So this is how you accidentally die. Okay. Yes, you can live like this by giving up 3 stones, but that's difficult to read. And in order to avoid oops, make your eye and then leave. Make your eye and then leave. Right? But here we're cutting on the outside. So if we're not careful and we get Gote on the outside, we might die on the inside. But he messed up. Okay, so that was nice. You can actually just go here. Because now when he does this, you just capture, and he can't connect. But okay, no big deal. You surround, yeah. So he tried to kill you without protecting his own stuff first. So this is why you don't attack with weakness. Okay, so now you're alive, so big move. Alright, we're cutting our opponent. I would like to work on this later. Right now I'm more concerned with you learning how big moves work. So I wouldn't worry about cutting my opponent right now. I'll just here. Or build the big area. And then when our opponent comes in, we just surround.
So why is that not a weak group, like around L5? That's what I was thinking. I thought, well, there's weakness there. Why don't I try and exploit it before doing my next thing?
Because it's not a weak group inside the big area. So, for example, what if I just give it up? You see how 2 stones is just 4 points? But on the right side,
Okay.
you compare that to if you had played, like, compare that here to here. You got a couple stones. But weak groups that are not getting surrounded in a big way aren't always weak groups. So this is why right now, before we learn to attack, we need to learn defense, big move. Defense, big move. Defense, big move. And then when our opponent comes in, then we surround. We unsettle and surround. Because then we're in the big area. Now, if the 2 dies, that's a big area. But if these stones die, it's not that big of an area. And you'll learn this when we get stronger, that 7 stones or less, that's not an area, is very easy to sacrifice.
Right. So when I was playing this, I had my Clossius approach PDF printed in front of me, and it says, does my opponent have weakness? And I thought, yes, so I'm going to attack it. But what you're now saying is, if it's a tiny weakness, don't worry about it. Focus on something bigger.
Yeah. So offense-wise, this actually is pretty good for your level. But when you get a little bit stronger, you'll understand that weakness is only weakness when it's valuable weakness.
Got it.
So weakness is groups. So there's a difference between a weak stone and a weak group. So let's take, for example, let's say A and B. Which one's a stone, which one's a group, and how do we tell the difference?
Well, A's a stone and B's a group.
And how do we tell the difference?
Because A doesn't influence anything, it's a standalone stone, but B is influencing the whole corner, so it could be seen as the start of a group.
Right. So B has to do with a big area, but A is just a little corner. So weak groups are things worth attacking, but weak stones are not unless those are cutting stones that are cutting off your groups. So weak stones, like 5 stones or less, you don't really attack unless they're cutting stones, cutting groups, or unless they're an area. In other words, a group. Because what you're interested in is groups, not single stones. What you're interested in is areas, not tiny little things. And so while you are learning, you definitely applied it correctly for a 21Q. You said, my opponent has a cutting point, I'm going to cut. This is not a ladder. He's actually cut. This is good. That is absolutely correct. But when you get stronger, you'll understand that 2 stones is actually easy to sacrifice unless they're cutting stones or something. All right, so your opponent fixes, and that's no big deal.
So the other, before you leave that subject, the other thing is the largest framework. I didn't want white to establish a massive framework, and I thought by moving it L6, I've got a sense of dividing that framework up and really going into it. I don't know if I can draw on here like this. Oh, I was thinking of it as a straight line. Okay.
Think of a framework as a bowl. Can it hold water? Like if you draw the borders, which one can hold water?
Well, none of them can.
If we assume the edge, if we assume the edge, which one can hold like water? And you just bring it up.
Okay, so right.
But this one, you bring it up.
In the top right.
Yeah. And it's kind of flat. You have to bring it up on 2 sides. So technically it is thickness, but it is not influence. It's not a framework. It's just thickness. Thickness can be used in many different ways because it affects this area. But it's not a framework without edges. It needs at least one edge.
Good to know.
It needs at least one edge to threaten to be a framework. So here, I'm building up a framework.
Another valuable lesson, thanks, because I just didn't understand that at all.
Yeah. Try to avoid cutting with 2 things instead of just 1, because technically you have 2 stones in the center that are not alive yet, and if you start a second cut and get 2 more stones, now you have 2 problems. You typically want just 1 problem at a time. So make him fix, and then save your stones. And you have control. You cancel out his thickness, and now you have control, or you kind of like negate his thickness in the center. You don't technically have control of the center, but you can see that how white doesn't have control either. So technically you gain positive value. You negated white's thickness by utilizing the cutting points. So that's good. It's maybe not the best move, but it's good. You got value. That's good. But do you kind of understand what happened here?
Yeah, I do. It's really valuable. Now, I'm understanding much more about the word framework, which I totally misunderstood earlier.
Gotcha. Yeah, so here, the cutting points here is like Only just deal with one at a time. You don't want to deal with two at a time. That's just too complex. Yeah. You see how fast it got complex and how crazy it is? You definitely have the advantage here because white has more problems than you, but this is getting really complex very quickly. Ooh, so close. This is where Go problems come in.
Snapback, yeah. I need to do more snapbacks.
Connections and cutting problems are technically more important than snapbacks for you right now. Snapback is not super important until like 15Q plus. But yeah, you did miss a snapback here.
Yeah, but I just don't see them. Like I'm blind to them. Like they just don't make sense to me. Obviously, that's because I don't understand cutting points properly still, right?
Yes, you have to learn things in order. If you learn things out of order, like you'll be seeing stuff in random places that don't make sense. The reason I know snapback is because I'm keeping an eye on A's liberties because A is the cutting stones from my B and C stones. So it's all about if I can capture A, then I connect. So it still cuts and connections. And I just noticed the liberty.
That was the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, that was the whole point of my move on the other side. But I didn't follow through properly.
Yeah, and you just it's just so complicated. Good, and you connect. You kind of got cut on the left side though, so that wasn't good. You're trying to cut for defense again. Does this actually cut something, or are you just gonna die?
Yeah, I'm seeing cutting as value just because it's cutting and it's not.
Yeah, cutting for the sake of cutting is not good. Cutting, like you have to learn to see cutting points, which you can do. You definitely see cutting points. That is absolutely correct. But you need to now learn the timing of cutting points or how they work. So this one is bad. So like the difference if I cut now, I get an I. But if I cut when he doesn't have that liberty blocked, he gets an I. So yes, it is a cutting point, but now you need to take it to the next level and say which cuts work, which cuts don't.
Yep, sounds good.
You're running away. You're doing a lot of pushing moves. We need to start running with diagonals and 1-point jumps on the 19x19. It's much faster. Like 1-point jump. And then Nobi if I can. 1-point jump. Okay. Yeah, this is too many problems. Just, I would give up the 3 stones and just focus on my weak group. Just focus on my weak group. One problem at a time. This is 2 problems, and now it's going to be very, very difficult for you. This is not running away. This is you trying to attack again. How does this escape? Yeah, just run away. Run away. Stay connected. You're in a lot of trouble though, so you're probably going to die. But yeah, you're trying to attack. You're Ataring. You're doing liberties. You're playing Hanes, playing false eye shapes. You're trying to make a Tiger's Mouth a false eye. That's all attacking, but you are supposed to be playing defense right now. You're cutting,
Yep.
but you're supposed to be playing defense. This ladder is good for you. Yes.
Yep, it is good for me, but my opponent didn't realize that.
Nice read. It's a very nice catch that you saw that was good for you. Oh, it's impossible. Yep. And you just start cutting stuff.
So now, how should I have taken advantage of this? Because, like, I just didn't know where to start.
You just start cutting. The only issue is A is still dying, but other than that, like if you're just looking at the ladder, just cut any of it, and it's good for you. Just cut, and it's good for you. No, this is good for you, and you actually kill him. Oh, you don't see. Just Atari, and use that.
I think I did that.
You did this one.
Yeah, the next move maybe.
There's another double Atari here. There's a Atari here. There's so many cutting points. You're not seeing your own liberties. You're too busy trying to cut your opponent and attack your opponent that you're not looking at your own defense. Don't worry about attacking your opponent right now, because right now you are ignoring your defense so much that you can't even look at your opponent's stuff right now. You have to learn to defend and then play big moves. And then once you can do that, then you can learn how to attack. Because I think you're looking at the Clossius approach, but the thing is, while you're learning, your opponent's weaknesses are so much more obvious than yours. It's because attacking your opponent is so much more fun, right? So while you're learning, it's more important for you to train your eyes to see yours than it is for you to see your opponent's. And that is why, if you have to, just completely skip step 2 of the Clossius approach. And just say, my weakness, big move. My weakness, big move. And do that until you're not missing your weaknesses at all. And then you add on your opponent's weaknesses. And when you're doing your opponent's weaknesses, you have to realize that sometimes weaknesses in your position will come up while you're attacking, and you have to prioritize yours. So that is why, like here, for example, like you're like, Atari, I'm attack. Oh, I need to defend now, and then I can keep up the attack. But you just say attack, and it backfires. Because you don't notice when your problems arise. So you have to train your eyes to see yours first, because those are the ones that are harder to see. Those are the ones that'll make your attacks fail, and those are the ones that'll cost you the game by killing your group. So you have to learn defense first, and until you can see defense 100% of the time, you don't really have the chance to play offense, because you can't trust yourself not to miss something and have your offense just fail. If you can't attack without something falling apart, that means you can't trust your attack. That means it's not even worth attacking. If you can't trust your attack, it's not worth attacking. Just defend, big move. And you can get to 16Q doing that. But yeah, it's just you keep cutting and playing Hanes instead of playing defense. You're missing defense chances. Technically, and this is of course bigger, but like technically, you have a cutting point because he took a liberty. Technically, you can be cut. Like, we got to see that. We got to know that. We have to say, okay, is this cut bigger or is this cut bigger? But right now, while we're learning, my cuts are always the more important one. Does it work? Yes or no? And you have to check those things. So you can't get distracted. Right now, while you're learning, it's so important. This is completely unnecessary. It's already dead. No need. Don't waste the move. You could go cut your opponent, but go play defense and make your base. Okay, and then you can cut your opponent. Top side, actually, maybe you need defense on the top side. Maybe you need your eyes. I don't know. Just defense and big move. Defense and big move. Don't capture things that are already dead. It's kind of like passing. Ooh, almost. Atari this way, and then Atari. Ladder.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so you're seeing cutting points, but you got to learn how to use the cutting points now.
Yeah. So it's like there was this feast of terrible cutting points in my opponent, and I couldn't choose which one, so I went hungry instead of feasting because I just wasted my turns. I nearly lost the game despite a massive ladder.
There's no way.
Lesson. That's awesome.
Like the only thing you have to worry about is, did you save the A group? Like the cutting points, there's absolutely no way you can mess that up, right? As long as you don't get captured with that false ladder, there's no way it's not good for you. Okay, I don't care if you get confused on which cuts. As long as you cut like one or two of the cuts, none of White's moves can do anything because there's a million weaknesses. Okay, so even if you do like next to nothing, it's still good for you. So don't stress about that. The only way this was not going to work out for you is if A was dead. So as soon as you captured the B stones, then nothing was bad for you. There's no way it could have cost you the game.
Well, that's actually why I did cap that's why I did capture that B group, because I didn't want the other group to be at risk. But you said it was like an unnecessary move.
No, it's unnecessary because the white stones are already dead. Like, how can white survive? So you played here.
Yeah.
It's dead. Okay? You defend, blah, blah, blah. So if I do anything, how can that white group survive?
Yeah, it's surroundable and killable, yeah.
It has one liberty. As long as you don't miss white taking all of these liberties, that is the only time you have to capture, is when something out on the outside is an Atari or something. But if you're not an Atari, it's dead as it stands. That's no longer a group that you have to kill. It's already dead. So why waste it? Why waste that entire move?
Good point, thanks.
And you'll learn that the more experience you get, the more you'll learn that. Okay, this is just a fun little capture, but kind of unnecessary. But okay, no big deal. Yep, just having fun. But you lost the corner. Defense first, then you can attack. Make your base, and then you can attack. See, you were so busy attacking that you lost your corner. Oops.
Yeah, I nearly lost the game.
No, I can't see you losing this game from this position.
I nearly did. It was only 12 points in it. I couldn't believe I was such a strong position, and I played so badly that I nearly lost. Which is why I wanted you to review this. So I've learnt lots already.
So first off, the corner doesn't have a base. Second off, okay, so you blocked this area, I guess. So you're going to reduce, or kind of want to do this.
Yeah, I was trying to protect my territory.
Okay, it looks like this isn't protecting, this is pushing. This is protecting, this is pushing. Big difference. Now you're pushing, and now he walks in. But it's okay, because you sacrificed 2 stones and cut him off. Because 2 stones isn't the area. So here, it's that same lesson, A or B. Which one's the stones, which one's the group?
Got it. That's really good.
Yep. So you saved the stones, he saved the group.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, but no big deal. You're trying to cut again. Just stop trying to cut your opponent apart. Just defense, big move. Defense, big move. Defense, surround. And when you want to, if they invade you or something, just surround. But trying to cut a 1-point jump is actually really hard. Cutting 1-point jump, like 1-point jumps are defense shapes because they're so easy to protect and easy to play with. It's hard to cut a 1-point jump. So why are we cutting a 1-point jump? This is unnecessary block. Don't need it. Just reduce. You're in Yosei. Reduce. Good. 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 Okay. Unnecessary. You're not an Atari yet, so reduce. Good. 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 Nice. Nice finish. Is it Dame? Yeah, I guess so. This? Why here? It's a chicken move. If the cut worked, it would have worked.
Yeah, I'm good at chicken moves.
Yeah, if something worked in there, it would have been there for the last, 50 moves. So why are you defending it at the end when you should have read it, when it was there, when it happened? So, let's see, this is 278. This one's 235. So 40 moves. For 40 moves, you said there was nothing there. You're like, block, don't care. I'm going to go play Yosei. If this cutting point worked, you need to fix it. If he can invade, you need to fix it. Right? But There's nothing there. So you went and played Yosei, and your moves said that there's nothing there. So why did your moves change their mind right at the end? You can't do that. Either there's something there or there's not, right? And you have to be consistent. If you're going to defend at the end, then you should have defended 30 moves ago. And you can't defend
Good
unless...
point. Thank you.
Yeah, you cannot defend unless you can say to yourself, what will my opponent play in there? It's better to lose a game than to play a chicken move. Because you're supposed to say, before you waste an entire move defending that, you have to say, what will my opponent play in there that will work? And if you see nothing, then don't defend. And then if your opponent does something, then you learn a new shape. It's better to lose a game and learn a new shape than it is to defend because of unknown or uncertainty. Okay? So do not play these chicken moves. Very, very bad habits. It'll prevent you from getting stronger. This one too.
Thanks, that's awesome.
This one too. You've lost 3 points in chicken moves. Okay, so you said this game was close. Let me see. Go to the original game. Okay, it says you're up by 13 and a half. Oh, so when you had played the ladder, and your opponent was just cut all the pieces. So at the point where your opponent misplayed the ladder, basically, you were up by 101 points.
Yeah, that's pretty bad for me, right? He nearly won.
So let's see, you lost points there. It's like, okay. The reason he was up by 101 is because the AI could have killed an entire section of the board, but okay. Let's realistically say that you couldn't have killed that. So you were actually up by 55 points for your level. All you had to do was block the center. But then he lived in the top right corner, and then you were up by 25 points. Then he destroyed your center, and you didn't get anything. And that's when you're up by 15 points. Okay. So, honestly, the only mistake you made is you never got value from your control.
Review started.
But other than that, you did decently well. I mean, you still outplayed him, and you still won. Honestly, 13 points, less than 13 points is close. This is true, but 25, 30 points is close at this level. So it's not that big a deal. Clearly, 100 points is close at this level because you don't know how to kill stuff yet. But that's fine. You're still learning. So we're just looking at your moves and your mistakes. And honestly, the big thing is cutting points. Cutting points, cutting points, cutting points. The second thing is there's a lot of bonus information I gave you this game.
Yeah, I'm going to watch this several times. Thank you.
Yeah. Ignore your opponent's weakness for now until, let's say, 17Q. Until 17Q. Because you are getting distracted with your opponent's weakness, and you are neglecting your own and also missing chances for big moves. Okay, so right now, we're just going to ignore our opponent's weakness. The only exception to this is... let's go back to the review. The only exception to ignoring our opponent's weakness is if they're inside of our framework. So, for example, let's say I did that, and our opponent plays a 3-3. Like, we're not going to ignore that. We're going to surround. Right? That's fine.
Right.
Let's say our opponent...
Yes.
Let's say our opponent invades us. Okay? That's fine. We just surround. We can unsettle and surround. Like, responding to that is fine. right? But we're still watching our weaknesses every single turn. We're watching our problems first. And honestly, the best time to attack is when they invade our framework. When we control the area, starting a fight then is really nice because we have all the control. But when you're trying to start all these fights when you have weakness or when your opponent controls the area, then it's really hard to fight. So it's kind of like we're just picking our battles. So it's better to not fight your opponent at all until you learn how to stand on your own first. And then you can say, I'll fight my opponent when I'm holding a giant sword versus I'm going to fight my opponent in a straight-up fist fight. Right? So I'd rather fight my opponent inside
That
of the
sounds
area.
like good advice. Thanks.
Yeah. I'd rather fight my opponent when they're inside of my area of control instead of in the center where no one controls it. Right? So eventually you're going to have to learn how to fight in these other areas, but right now your priorities are defense and big move. And if they invade you, then fine, you can respond to that. But you should be just thinking, do I have any problems? If not, then go make points. Do I have weakness? No? Go make points. And you can have so much territory just by doing that. And then it's going to be your opponent's job to try to deal with you because you're always going to have more territory than them.
That sounds like a good place to be.
Yeah. Now, here's a common pitfall with that thing, with what I just said. Playing a big move doesn't mean you ignore your opponent's framework. Okay, so big moves, if you recall from the Clossius approach, is open corner, open sides, largest framework. It does not say open corner, open sides, your largest framework. It says open corner, open side, largest framework. So a big move can be your opponent's framework or your framework. So make sure you play on the biggest framework. Reducing your opponent's framework is not attacking. So that's not something that we're just skipping and neglecting. And I have seen a few students get confused at this, where you're like, oh, I want to play defense and then the big framework. But then they're only looking at their moves. And yeah, you're supposed to technically only look at your moves at this level because you're trying to master yourself first, and then you'll master your opponent's shapes. But if your opponent's framework's the big one, you can't ignore that. That's kind of the only exception to ignoring your opponent. Like, if your opponent takes your base, you have to respond. If your opponent surrounds you, you have to respond. If your opponent makes the big framework, you have to respond. That's all defense and big moves. We're just skipping the offense step right now until you can get this stuff down. Because right now you like to cut a little too much.
Fantastic.
You don't protect your cuts, but you love attacking your opponent's cuts. So you have to learn what cutting points work, what cutting points don't, and just defense, then big move. Let's see. Oh, I spent the entire lesson on that.
That's really worth it. I really appreciate it. That's fantastic.
Did you have any quick questions about the other ones? I kind of feel bad for not reviewing your other games as well.
No. I got so much from that. That was the best. That was my preference.
Awesome.
That was wonderful.
So let me send you my notes. Those are my two big notes. Revisit the small boards to remaster cutting points, because you are kind of losing all these contact fights because of the cutting points. We cannot mess up the cutting points. That is vital for attack and offense. Okay, and after that, we're going to just focus on defense, big move, defense, big move, defense, big move. And you can kind of get away with that until 17Q as long as you're doing it properly. As long as you're not neglecting your bases, not neglecting your cutting points, and not neglecting your groups as they get surrounded. As long as you don't neglect your own defense, and then just go to the big move, should be fine. The only exception is if your opponent invades you when you have a lot of area. You can't ignore that. But just don't ignore that, and you should be fine. Do you have any questions about this?
Thanks. No, that's awesome. Thanks, Clossius. I'm going to listen and watch this a few times, and that's going to help me a lot.
Awesome. So yeah, as always, if you have any questions, message me on Discord, and you can also get game reviews on my stream. And if there's no other questions, then yeah, I get you on here. And actually,